Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Sometimes the technology we have to live with. We are coming to you live via Facebook streaming, via YouTube streaming, and also via Skype online. Each one of you is welcome to this morning's meditation. There was a poet, Rilke was his name. He was like a madman. Whenever he used to do ordinary things that each one of us do, he is putting on his shoes, putting on his shirt, coat. You will inquire, normally it is normal, will this shirt look good on me or not? He used to ask, my dear shirt, will I look good for you? Would you like to keep my company for certain hours? Then he will ask the question from the coat, shoes, and when he returns home, he will dust off the shoes and will thank the shoes. Thank you very much for walking with me for 2 miles, 2 hours. Thank you very much for being in my company. The name of the poet was Rilke, Rilke. This is the state we use clothes, the food. You ask, someone asks you, did you like this food? No, he will ask the food, do you like my company? And things like this, I will in detail explain this particular poem, which is basically in Hindi language. I'll do it English rendition in order to explain small things that we do not pay attention to. You put on your clothes, you walk around, you go somewhere, someone says you are looking nice, and you are looking nice because of the clothes that you are wearing. Do you have? For you, those clothes are dead. The shirt, the trousers, the coat, whatsoever you wear, shoes are dead. But for Rilke, these were not dead, they were alive, and they were his friends. He will ask them, if you would like my company for certain hours, I am going, would you like to go with me? This sounds like almost like madness. In the realm of the heart, one has to be mad. In the realm of the being, one has to be mad. Suicide and human consciousness. Suicide is part of human consciousness and, in a way, human freedom as well. Sometimes you become so engrossed in a problem that the whole consciousness becomes narrow. The moment you are engrossed in the problem, the consciousness becomes narrow. And when it becomes narrow, you do not find the solutions. When in a situation like this, one is not finding the solution, that simply means the consciousness is getting narrow and narrow. It is then focused on a problem, and the mind is always searching for something that can become an excuse for misery. Sometimes it finds such beautiful excuses that you cannot see through it. By example, for example, suicide. Something has to be understood about it. Something has to be understood about it. Life in itself is not intrinsically a value. Neither is death in itself intrinsically a disvalue. Life is value and death is disvalue. Just as man is losing the taboo about sex, man has to lose the taboo about death too. Death too is a taboo. It has become, because we do not know anything about it and we are interested in knowing about death. What is more important is to know about life, and the moment you have known about life, you do not worry about death. Death has become a taboo. Suicide is not a sin, it is just a part of human freedom. It should be. One day or the other, certainly it will be a part of every constitution of every nation. It should be part of one's birthright, that a man has a birthright to commit suicide. Nobody should be forced to live because it is ugly. It is an individual decision. If I do not want to live, then that is how it should be. No law should prevent me from. That is, if there is a law preventing it, that means interfering with my freedom. Life is also an imprisonment. One is not even free to die. Death is a part of human freedom, and man is the only animal who can commit suicide. I am explaining something deeper about suicide, not that I am professing that you should commit suicide. That is an individual decision. Man is the only animal who can commit suicide. It is much evolved quality. Dogs, birds, trees, fishes all cannot commit suicide. That means it is only the man who can take such an ultimate decision whether to live life or not to. There is nothing specifically beautiful in dying a so-called natural death. There is nothing specifically beautiful about it. A natural death is as much a death as a suicide. The man who commits suicide has one thing beautiful. He has never asked about birth. Birth was unconscious. Now he does not want to die like a machine as he was born, because the birth was not in his hand and there was no freedom. Whether he should be born, no one asked him the question. And no one asked him the question whether you want to be born in this family or not. Now, he does not want to die like an unconscious. At least he can choose his death. He will choose his death out of his freedom. He wants to assert his freedom as far as death is concerned. Birth was an accident. Now he does not want death also to be an accident. When a Buddha decides that he wants to enter into Mahaparinirvana, or a saint or an awakened one declares the time of his death, it is, don't you think it is a kind of a self-chosen moment? He has freedom when to leave the world. It happened with my grandmother, the Sufi Sheikh Shakuntala Devi. In 1955, my grandfather Naqshbandi Sheikh Sufi Brij Mohan Lal took Samadhi. 1955. So many times she had the vision that she asked the Sheikh to take her with him. He said, no, your work is not over. On 1st of April 1974, he went to visit a family in another city who insisted that she should come because her daughter-in-law had a delivery case, complicated, and doctors said that her possibility of survival was very less. She went. On her return from that city, she passed through that city where the shrine of her husband is. And she told me that this time when she went to the shrine, and she said that all my works are over. Take me with you. All my works are over. Take me with you. This is a conscious entry into death. Then, now the act has to be performed on the stage. A story is written, how the script has to go for 2.5 hours, and everything has to be enacted according to that plan. She went into a state of coma, then she came out of that and went back. And Friday, 12th of April 1974, she entered into Samadhi. A day before she came into consciousness, she asked her son, my uncle Sufi, Omkarnath, What day did your grandfather took samadhi? He was a little bit hesitant, looking for the date. In that state, she said, this is how you will do the work. Things like these should be on your fingertips. I took a note of it. The days and the dates. On what day did your grandfather took samadhi? Then she said, she confirmed that he took samadhi on Friday, 7th of June 1947. And that too in a unique way. In the afternoon, he was a diabetic. Every afternoon, he will have a roasted potato. And he said when you roast the potato, its quality changes as compared to boiled or cooked in the normal way. The roasted potato is very beneficial for health, and roasted Bengal gram or chana. That was his afternoon snack. He was sitting in his lotus posture on the bed. He sent out everyone from the room to fetch one thing or the other. He and his consort was there in the room, and he entered into samadhi. When he entered into samadhi, now it was that he's sitting in the lotus posture, he has to lie down. So there was a cook in the house. He was Brahmin by caste. So he never allowed him to touch his feet. So what he did, there was no one. So he tried to holding his legs, stretch it so that he can be in the lying position. As he went to touch his feet, he got a shock and he fell on the ground. Then he realized that he never allowed him to touch his feet. So how can he allow his feet to be touched when his body, he is entering into death? So a few days before, I think night before, I had a vision early in the morning that her husband, Sufi Brijmohan Lal, came and he said that you had been requesting so many times to take you with me. I have come to take you with me. Firstly, she said that my works are over. I am ready to come. Would you not call a suicide a conscious decision to enter? And then when one of the disciples, seekers, in 1955, when Brijmohan Lal took samadhi, he did not get the message, he could not reach. And it happened that when he came, everything was finished. So he mentioned it to Shakuntala Devi that I was so unfortunate that I could not attend the funeral of my beloved master. So at this, Shakuntala Devi said, Pandit, I will not do that to you. When my time will come, I will call you. He was about 7-8 hours journey by train or bus from the city where Shakuntala Devi was. Thursday he get a message, felt in, that Shakuntala Devi is telling him, Pandit, my time has come to leave and I promised you that I will inform you. So come quickly. And Friday, 12th of April 1974, 6 o'clock in the morning, he comes in. And he mentioned to me the dream, that vision that he had. So I told him, once an awakened one makes a promise to someone, and that promise is made consciously, the entire existence tries to fulfill it. It is restored. It is stored in the memory of the existence. And from there, at the right moment, it comes in and the message reaches to the person. This is conscious death. Anytime one decides to die on his own, in modern terminology we call it suicide. But this you cannot call it suicide. Birth was unconscious. Now he does not want to die like unconscious, like a robot. At least he can choose his death. He will choose death out of his freedom. The awakened one choose the freedom, exert their freedom to choose the moment. Buddha told Anand that I am entering into Mahaparinirvana. Do not let anybody come in. The same time as he has retired to enter into Mahaparinirvana, a person named Subhadra came. And he said many times, I passed through the place where Tathagat was, but I could not come. I want to come and meet him now. Anand said, but he has retired for Mahaparinirvana. Buddha heard it. He said, Anand, let him come in. Because I do not want anyone to say that Buddha was still alive and he did not attend to a seeker. So he wants to exert his freedom and does not want death to be by accident. And dying on a deathbed in a hospital through an illness has nothing intrinsically beautiful about it. But we have been taught down the ages that something is wrong in suicide, a conscious death. The term that we can use for suicide is conscious death, and we are afraid of it. In fact, the fear comes from deep down in our unconscious, because something we also think of suicide, and whenever somebody commits suicide, it stirs up our whole being. It is very rare to find an intelligent man who has never thought about committing suicide. Indeed, it is very rare. There are moments when everyone thinks of it. When everybody commits suicide, suddenly you are shaken. So he has done it finally. That's the word that comes on your lips. You are afraid to accept and respect his action. Accept the action and respect it, because if you respect and accept his suicide, then there is every danger that tomorrow you may decide to commit suicide as well. So to be on the safe side, you reject, you condemn and say suicide is not good. And you feel sorry. Something bad has happened. It should have been prevented. Something should have been done. Why should this man die? He should have lived. Suicide is part of human consciousness and human freedom as well. Sex is now becoming acceptable. It has, to some extent, it is not a taboo as it used to be. So too, one day suicide will also become acceptable by the society. The day both are accepted totally, that will be the day of liberation. And ultimately, remember, nothing dies. Nobody has ever died. Death only happens to body that is already ephemeral. One day the body came into existence when the consciousness in you assumed the form of the body and saw the green of the trees, the sunrise, and all that. People go on slipping from one body into another, from one house into another, so there is no need to be worried about it. But your understanding is only of the body. If the body is no more, everything is gone. The moment you have understood that I am neither the body, nor the mind, nor the memory, nor the ego sense, nothing of these things. Instead, I am the eternal, unborn, unmanifest consciousness, Chidananda Rupa, Shivoham, Shivoham. Only then you can understand. Have an acceptance of everything. All these things will happen, and if you get disturbed about these things, it will be difficult for you to cope in life. It can become more and more a problem for you because he may have talked to you about the suicide. Guilt may have arisen deep within you. Guilt may have arisen deep within in your heart that you should have helped him not to commit suicide. You should have talked to him. Such things are natural. When somebody has a suicidal tendency, we let the priest talk to him, and priest will convince that life is precious, you should continue to live life, problem comes in everybody's life, why do you want to end your life? There is no need to feel guilt about it. Help people to understand. In fact, if somebody comes to you and says he wants to commit suicide, do not persuade him not to do so. Just make him aware that if he wants to do, why he wants to do it, without any judgment and without any hint about what should be done. Just let him see the whole thing. Then whatsoever he decides, let that be his decision. We are no more, no one to interfere. We are nobody to interfere. One day it happened, one of the seeker called me and he said, Master, I am going to commit suicide. I said, that's a wonderful idea. When are you going to do it? Do not waste your time in talking to me. You have already made a decision. Just tell me, how have you decided to commit suicide? They were the different options. He said, I never thought of options. I said, are you serious about committing suicide, or just you are making a joke. If you are serious, then you should know the option, how are you going to commit suicide? And just go and do it. Why do you have informed me, I have heard it. When the process is completed, I'll come. The purpose is let death be conscious. This is what you can do. Birth was not in your hand, but death you can make it conscious, and the moment you enter into death consciously, your next birth will be conscious. Do not let him die consciously do not let him die unconsciously. Let there be no guilt in it. When somebody takes samadhi, we consider that this person has something great. That too is another form of suicide, but fully conscious. It happened 19th of January 1990. Osho was in his room and his physician Amrito and another person was there. They realized that Osho's pulse was getting feeble. Said it is time to leave. So Amrito had tears in his eyes. He said, this is how you bid farewell to a Buddha. He said, how would you like? He said, take me to Buddha Hall for 10 minutes. And from there, take me straight away to the funeral place, burning heart. So when he said, take me to Buddha Hall for 10 minutes, that he wanted to be in the company of the people because it was the evening time of the meditation. So he wanted to give the last glimpse to the seekers. Take me to the Buddha Hall for 10 minutes. And from there, take me straight away to the burning heart. So what time did Osho's consciousness left the body? Have you ever pondered on this? When he uttered those words and expressed the desire to be in Buddha Hall, in the company of the seekers, the evening meditation, he was alive. So somewhere, and no one carries a living body for the funeral. So somewhere after being in the company of the meditators in Buddha Hall, Osho's consciousness would have left. It was unconscious, but we consider it as great. When someone decides to commit suicide, we consider it ugly. The one who decides to commit suicide, he is consciously entering into death. But he is entering into death because of some problems or some uncertain situations. It should not be. All you can do is to make him conscious of his decision and then allow him to enter death willingly and joyfully. People die out of fear, and vast majority of the people die asleep. And indeed, that should be the attitude about every problem that people bring to you. Make it clear to them. Bring in aspects that are not in their consciousness to explain them certain things. Let the whole problem be brought to them. Let them see it from every side, every angle. Bring clarity, transparency, and then leave it to them to decide. You are not there to decide. You make the things clear, and the decision has to be theirs. A conclusion is not for you to make. Whatsoever they do, you must respect it. Otherwise, sometimes the work of a psychoanalyst or a therapist can become very dangerous. It is not just accidental that psychotherapists commit suicide 4 times more than any other profession, because they have to deal with those people constantly, helping them, and by the idea starts settling in their own consciousness, and seeing so many people commit suicide, unconsciously they also become fascinated by suicide and thus venture into suicide. Just make it clear, give them an understanding. If anyone wants to make it, if anyone comes to you, make it clear. Help him to be conscious of his decision. The decision to die should not be an unconscious decision. By helping, I do not mean that you should have to persuade him not to do the suicide. That is none of your business. By helping is simply meant that you should bring light to the point which is not clear to the person. So he decides to commit suicide. He decides knowingly, fully well that he is going to do it. And there is no guilt. If he decides to do it, he decides knowing fully well that he is going to do that. And for us, it is the same. Whether he does it or does not doesn't matter. If in every way we should respect his freedom. Only thing is this, you must make the things clear. And when you two get concerned about something, naturally you forget your awareness. Many times people come, they mention of their problems relating to health, this and that. If you get engrossed into it, you are losing the consciousness. You are losing your awareness. This is natural. It will happen less and less. More and more you will find yourself in tune with your innerness. That is what is being available to the Master. But it takes time. There is nothing to be worried about it. Nothing to be worried about it. Whatsoever decision one takes, whether to live or not to live, it should be a conscious choice, and there should be not only freedom but clarity also. It should not be out of guilt or anything that you cannot get this thing done, so you commit suicide. You did not get your boyfriend or girlfriend, so you commit suicide. No. It should be a conscious decision that I am going to end my life. I do not want to live anymore. It should be a conscious choice. I am not propagating suicide. Instead, I want you to be totally conscious and enter into death knowingly, willingly and joyfully. There are examples of the awakened ones. Whether it was Al-Hilaj Mansur, or Socrates, or Jesus, or anyone else, they all enter into death consciously. We give it a great respect for it. But when someone commits suicide, consciously he has decided, we condemn it. My point is this. Only this much for this morning. Until tomorrow, take care and do have a pleasant day.